Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.
Oh, never mind. I'm on mute. There we go. Hey, everybody. I did that, I think, last time, too. What's up? Wow. Welcome to the Wait For It podcast, live stream number 5, 6.
Yeah.
We're
there.
Yeah, here we are. And on this YouTube live thing, of course, which we are trying to implement more here on the Wait For It podcast. My name is Phil Smith, a.k.a. Phil the Filipino. And joining me, I got it right this time, to this way is my co-host, Mr. Eric Almighty, and we are going to be bringing you, as you can see in the title, a spoiler-free review of the latest Marvel film, Shang Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And I am excited to talk about this here tonight, Eric.
Yeah, a little bit of redemption for you there. That was fantastic to see. I am really, really happy that this movie turned out the way it did. I think that a lot of people had high hopes for it. We are going to be getting into it, spoiler free. So please bring on the questions, because Phil, without any further ado, we're pretty much ready to talk about it. Unless we're going to go over, why don't I just jump into it, because I'm excited. This episode, guys, is going to pretty much just roll the way it's been rolling. So it's going to be likes, dislikes. We're going to go into our overall thoughts, and then we're going to go into our final grade, because every review has to have a grade. But Phil, I'm super excited to talk about this film. I've waited long enough. Let's jump into it.
Yes, Shang-Chi, of course, is, I would say, the official start of Phase 4, right? Like, technically, it was, as far as the films, it was supposed to be Black Widow, but I feel like this is really like the proper kickoff. Or do you think it's really more so of the shows?
No, this is Phase 4. Like, we've moved into whatever the hell is about to happen. Like, the shows have set us up with the multiverse, obviously, but this one felt like it wasn't exactly tied to that story, but it did launch us forward, which I really, really liked, with new characters that we can really back and we can look forward to. A combination, some cameos that we won't quite get to talk about, which is disappointing. Maybe we'll have like a 1-minute spoiler rant at the end. Who knows? But there's a lot of cameos that are in here that are moving the universe forward.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're not familiar with the character of Shang-Chi, that's okay. It's not necessarily a character that I really knew, that either one of us knew too much about whatsoever. I will read you guys here a quick synopsis, and it is just a sentence long here off of IMDb. Shang-Chi, the master of unarmed weaponry-based kung fu, is forced to confront his past after being drawn to the Ten Rings organization. And that's a very, very base level explanation of the film, because, of course, like you said, it's spoiler free, so we don't want to give too much away. But we'll start with likes and dislikes here, of course. And Eric, this is something we actually talked about as we were waiting for the after credit scenes to come through, and it was just the fight choreography in this is fantastic. And I think it's because, even though it does have, the type of like powers and all that kind of cool stuff that you expect to see from a Marvel film, the action is still very grounded, and it reminded me very much so of why I loved Captain America and the Winter Soldier. Do you agree there, Eric?
That's exactly. I feel like this is the second review we've brought up Captain and the Winter Soldier, like Captain America and the Winter Soldier. That is the MCU movie that stands out to be kind of like different, but kind of still within what they were going for. Same, but different. And I think that this movie really did a great job of callbacks to the Winter Soldier and a lot of the things that were done well in there, and they took it up a whole nother notch. This movie is fantastic. It has all the martial arts elements that it promises, but it still does its MCU typical things, which we'll get into for dislikes. But I really think it was a very creative way to move the story forward. It really fit in. The action scenes weren't just there just for no reason. I liked it. It was really, really good.
Yeah, it's man, I mean, there are some moments there where I'm just like smiling ear to ear because of just how cool it looks and how fluid everything was as well. So, I mean, it's a beautiful film too. I guess we're kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but just how the cinematography and the different locations in this movie were. I mean, man, we saw it a couple of days ago, and I'm still thinking about it here on Saturday night. I'll let you go next, though, Eric. What else did you want to point out as far as what you liked about the film?
So, and I really should have done my due diligence beforehand if this was one I was going to bring up. So I'm just going to apologize now. Hey, Landon, you did just make it in time. So I'm going to apologize now that I'm not going to even make the effort to pronounce names. Phil, you can definitely help me out there, but I will go to their character names. Shang Chi, Wenwu, Katie. There are so many characters in this movie that are fantastic. So many actors and actresses that are fantastic. I could really name them all. I really can't think of a character I didn't like in this film. And Phil, I'm curious to see if you and me agree on that or not. But it was really well casted.
No, it absolutely was. Even some of the characters that didn't necessarily serve like a huge purpose. Like the only one that really comes to mind is Razor Fist, and even he plays a semi-important role towards the end. Like it's definitely like you said, and we'll get to this here in opportunities or dislikes as far as, these all these Marvel movies could do with a little bit more fleshing out. And that's where it kind of falls a little short a little bit later in the film. But yeah, no, there wasn't anybody that was like, well, I could have totally done completely done without that character. That's not a thing in this, which is refreshing.
And the comedy as well is pretty good. I'm going to be honest with you and me, Phil. There's one standout character that we cannot mention, but you and me definitely we broke tears in laughter at certain points, and there is all I'm going to say is that there is a sequence involving Planet of the Apes that you just don't quite see coming, and it's probably one of the funniest MCU moments ever. It's so funny.
It's unexpected too, which I think is definitely also what makes it one of the funniest things to ever happen in any of these films. So yeah, like you said, we can't spoil it. I can't wait for like a few months from now when we can just openly talk about it because it's just so good. I'm definitely going to be seeing it again, so I can't wait to see that particular character. Yeah, let's get to one of the questions we did get from social media here, Eric. And I don't know how really to answer this one because, again, I don't necessarily want to spoil anything. But this was from a friend of the show, Anya, also known as Aizawa's love interest, who you've had on a couple times here on the Wait For It podcast. And are there any films? I guess the one that I would recommend is going to spoil a cameo, so I'm not going to mention that one, but I don't necessarily think there's anything else you have to see before you go see Shang-Chi, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I can kind of see what you're saying there. The biggest one is Iron Man 3, and it's because it involves the Mandarin. And obviously, the Mandarin is in this movie as Shang-Chi's father. Which, again, if you're just watching trailers, they pretty much reveal that. That's not a secret. That is probably the biggest one. So if you haven't watched Iron Man 3, I can't believe I'm telling you to watch it because I hate that film. But you probably are going to want to watch it. That's the biggest one, but I don't know. I don't think that there are too many movies that need to be watched. You really kind of got to watch all of them to get the little things here and there. This one isn't as deep as some of the other MCU movies, so I'd say Iron Man 3 is the only one that's a must watch. But again, that even you can kind of get away without because I hate that movie and I'd rather you not watch it.
Yeah, it's probably best you just don't watch it all together. Maybe watch like a YouTube video on it and see what happens
Yeah,
in
there's some clips.
in Iron Man 3. Yeah, because like you said, the actual Mandarin is in this, which, spoilers for Iron Man 3, which you shouldn't care about anyway. That was not the true Mandarin that shows up in that film. So, yeah, as far as any other likes that I have, I'll go next year, Eric, and that is just really a simple one. I mean, this is actually kind of piggybacking on what you just said as far as none of the characters, and also want to give a shout out to Landon. The only thing about Shang-Chi that is missing is there's no Kite Man. Now, we just need some kind of Kite Man crossover into the MCU. I totally agree. If Kite Man's not in the next Suicide Squad film, I'm gonna be absolutely livid. Let's see, 10 minutes into this thing it took for me to mention Kite Man. You can blame Landon for that, Eric, so don't get mad at me. I wasn't going to bring up Kite Man at all. So the thing that I wanted to mention is that Simu Liu, who is Shang-Chi, is a certified star. And I was already excited because I liked him prior to this. Like, I had seen him in a bunch of YouTube stuff. He did a lot of stuff with Wong Fu Productions back in the day. And I knew that he had what it took, but like finally, at least seeing it and being and having that verified was just very, very, it made me really, really happy because again, he showed that he belongs in this universe, of course, with a whole lot of heavy hitters. So I was just really happy that he came out and he showed out and he showed why he belongs, within this universe.
I think you pretty much hit the biggest probably that you could take away from the movie. He comes away completely relatable. He comes away very funny, very charismatic, like all the things you're looking for in a leading man. He's got that and more. So I'm excited for this particular character. One thing I really liked was the 10 rings themselves. I thought they were displayed very, very cool. And I thought they are different from the comic book iteration. I think that's kind of an improvement, especially since the Infinity Gauntlet just dealt with kind of like accessories on the hand.
I was going to say, wasn't that one of the things you were kind of concerned about, like leading into it, that like the rings were like, yeah. So that's good. That's good to know.
Yeah, I didn't know how it was going to go. They did it really well. The rings themselves all individually have powers. It seems like they've replaced that to be like the rings working together with all of those powers, which again is perfectly fine. I think for wider audiences that actually worked out, and it really gave us some pretty cool visuals. So I think that's the part I like the most. In addition to your action piece, like the 10 rings really stood out, and they seem like something that would make Shang-Chi belong with the other Avengers that he's going to be joining, I'm assuming in the future.
Yeah, and we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the villain here, which is interesting because I think it falls into both categories as far as likes and dislikes, because the villain, which is Shang-Chi and Xiaoling's father, who we also have to give a shout out to. I looked up the pronunciation of her name because I wanted to say it correctly, which is Meng Zhang, who played Xiaoling, who is Shang-Chi's sister. Also certified badass. Like, she was so great and fantastic. I also learned, this is kind of interesting, Eric. I learned in an interview she met and married her husband on the set of Shang-Chi. So I think that's pretty cool. So good for her.
There we go. We're dropping little pieces of knowledge here on the Wait For It podcast.
She also had no martial arts training before this, prior to the film, which is incredible once you see her performance as this character. So
it's insane.
So yeah, so the villains fall in to both categories, I think, and maybe we'll use this as a segue into opportunities or dislikes here, Eric, because the primary villain, which would be Zhu Wenwu, which is the true Mandarin, while maybe not as physically imposing as like a Thanos, or maybe as quick-witted as somebody like a Loki, is one of those very, very tragic villains. And this really, really played into the cultural significance of tragedy happening within a family and how it affects that family. It was very, I'm trying to think of the word here, but I know that it was very important for them to show both sides of a family tragedy and how it affects not just, the children, but also how it affects the other parent, when something very, very tragic happens. So I thought that was portrayed very, very well. But then the secondary villain, not as good, right? I mean, that's really just more of a copy and paste, cut and dry villain that we've seen a bunch of times in the MCU.
Yeah, which funny enough, I believe that is supposed to be Fin Fang Foom from the comics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I guess that like the MCU's version of it. That's my understanding. Not not excited about that. I mean, they obviously are throwing, if you look at the trailers, right, without giving too much away, they are basically going with some type of creatures, right? Because you can tell in the trailer that it eventually is going to go into the third act where there's this big battle. And that's where the MCU just can't help themselves. They've done this a couple times now, Phil, and it's starting to bother me because WandaVision kind of, the finale, not as strong. It kind of went the typical MCU route. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I think, kind of straight somewhere in the middle. Loki pretty much did that the episode before the finale with the big cloud dog. And and we're doing the same thing here. And I just don't know, like Black Widow too, with the whole sequence of them off the plane.
The thing falling from the sky.
I'm kind of over the MCU moments just for the sake of doing them. These films don't need this. Like, if you really think about the plot without going into spoilers, obviously, I don't really think we needed any of that. We could have done something a little bit more creative there. So I was definitely let down by the third act, but not by anybody's doing other than Marvel's need to just have big battle scene with people here and monsters here. I don't get it.
So I wanted to ask you this since we saw the film. The plot of this film is kind of like Godzilla versus Kong, but they did it better, right?
I just feel like you just wanted to shit on Godzilla there for no reason. Honestly,
I can get to shit on Godzilla.
I swear we're Godzilla. I swear we're fans. I swear we love Godzilla that franchise. Yeah.
King of the Monsters. It's fucking shit.
Okay, you just gotta let that one go. You gotta let that one go. I would say, yeah, you're probably right on that one.
Yeah, just the glaring. Okay, I just thought of a moment when they get into that area. I have to compose myself. Oh God, I can't think about that one scene. It will derail this entire episode. But yeah. And this is what I was talking about earlier, is where the Marvel films could really, for the most part, all of them could benefit from an extra 15 minutes. The film itself is 2 hours and 12 minutes. And actually, this is something that I probably could have mentioned in likes, is that it gets right to the action. Like, we don't really have to wait that long at all for it. So I was very, very surprised. Like, I thought, okay, we're going to have to hear this backstory for a little bit. But no, like 10 minutes into the film, Shang Chi is jumping into action and like kicking ass, which was great.
Yeah, and the way they started it off, it made it feel like we were not going to do that. So, like, to your point, once we got to that train scene, which happens pretty early, if you guys have watched the trailers, yeah, well, the bus scene. This is the thing. The trailers, I strayed away from them, but watching them back now, a lot was released about this movie. Like, a lot was released in the trailer. So I would just recommend, if you haven't gone down that rabbit hole, maybe just watch one Shang-Chi trailer, get an idea for it, watch this review, and then just go watch it, right? I wouldn't start watching multiple trailers because luckily I stayed away from that. But normally, Phil, I'm a trailer guy. And I think you know my lack of self-control on spoilers too. So, not a good combination. Luckily, I stayed away and it enhanced my ability to enjoy the film, but I can see people walking away being like, I saw a third of this movie in the trailers. So that's kind of like a dislike that didn't directly affect me, but I am aware of.
Yeah, there's a part in the third act that's directly from a trailer. And I was like, oh, I've seen this part before. And, luckily there was enough kept out of it so that we were still, kind of in the dark a little bit, because even leading up to this thing, we had a very base knowledge. We knew a couple of characters were returning that we didn't expect to see, in this or for a very, very long time. One of those this is not necessarily a spoiler, but it was cool to see Wong again, so that was really, really great. And of course, we're going to be seeing a lot of him, I think, here very, very soon, which is going to be really, really awesome. But yeah, I think, as I was saying, the film would have really benefited from an extra 15 minutes. And that's not even necessarily just Marvel movies. It's, that whole training montage that films just continue to consistently do. Like, they're just committed to training montages and getting ready for the big battle. And then, all right, the person is ready now. And that's just something that's just like, again, not even just a Marvel movie thing, but it's like, okay, we're doing this again. All right, got it. Okay.
Yeah, it's not really needed, except if, like in the case, you're the main character in Invincible, and it's still not enough. But again, I digress.
Okay, wait a minute.
I'm just saying he needs a training arc really badly. But yeah,
he
Mark,
has training.
think.
It's just getting his ass whooped. That's his training.
I guess so. But what I would say is that I would agree with you 100%. Like, those are the type of Marvel MCU things that just have to happen. There is one character with no training at all who has a grand moment with something she learned, and I'm assuming a day or two. So I'm a little, again, it's just one of those Marvel moments you have to just chalk up on the board and say, all right, I got to deal with that because it's a Marvel movie. But I am starting to notice them more often, and they are not as appealing as they used to be. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, again, a character that we're not 100% sure now. A character that's going to be, obviously, we now know, very, very important. For those of you who are wondering, there are 2 post-credit scenes in Shang-Chi. There is a mid-credit scene and a post-credit scene. So make sure, of course, you stay in those seats. So I told you, now you don't have to Google it when you get into the theater. But 2 very, very interesting scenes. I think I like the mid-credit scene more, but the post-credit scene, the implications of it could be very, very well. The implications of both of them are actually very, very big. So I'm excited to see what comes next there. Anything else, Eric, either on the the positive or the negative side that you want to point out? And we'll keep this one shorter, of course, because we don't want to spoil anything further. Anything else you want to mention before we get into our final grades?
No. I think we're ready to kind of give it a grade so people can get a real idea of how much we love this movie. It was a blast. Phil has been trying to watch it a second time, and each time he brings it up, we're a little bit closer to me saying yes. So I'm just saying, it's a very good film.
I just want to know if tomorrow you'll be doing your own live stream of the Paw Patrol film. Is that going to happen?
There's no need to bring that up. We don't have to bring up that I'm going to be watching Paw Patrol tomorrow, but that's fine. I did watch Vivo, which maybe we'll do that. Who knows?
All right,
that
part 2 of this live stream, Vivo.
This is where we transition into Vivo.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, let's get into our final scores here. I will go first in just a moment. But first, I want to let you guys know, as far as Rotten Tomatoes go, it is a certified fresh 92% on the tomato meter, and the audience score is 98%. So may give you an idea of where Eric and I are both heading on this. But I will go first here. And, Shang-Chi is very important. It's a very important film for me, of course. And it was obviously very important to everybody that was involved in making it. Like, there's been a steady incline of Asian representation over the last few years, but more importantly, there's been an incline of representation that hasn't simply been caricatures of what people believe Asians are. So Shang-Chi manages to share a tragic story of loss, but reveals how that loss can just completely destroy a family. And while the film has plenty of Marvel magic in it, as we mentioned, the action scenes for the most part are incredibly grounded and amongst the best in any Marvel film. It reminded me, as we said, of why we love the Captain America, the Winter Soldier so much. When you strip these films down and just add really great fight choreography, they're at their best. Captain America, Black Panther, and now Shang-Chi. This also contains one of the most random cameo appearances we have ever seen in a Marvel film. Think about the least likely thing that you think would happen in a Marvel film. You still would not guess what happens in this movie. And it's just mind-boggling, and I still can't believe it happened. It's beautifully shot. The choreography is amazing. The score is top-notch. I will certainly see it again, and I can't wait to see the characters introduced pop up again in future projects. Simu Liu and Munger Zhang are stars, and Shang-Chi has kicked off Phase 4 with a bang. I give it a 9.5 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's a high score, deservingly so. I feel like I'm fighting with my final score, so I'll think about that as I talk. Shang-Chi, obviously, like Phil mentioned, it means a lot to a lot of people, but I didn't want to go in there just saying, and I did this with Black Panther, I didn't want to go in there and affect my rating of the film by just saying this is an important movie for an important group of people. Luckily, this movie does a lot more things that the MCU does right typically than not. The knots, of course, obviously they follow some of the typical MCU tropes, but those really aren't bad enough to knock my love of this movie. I'm glad we got the Asian representation, finally, other than Scarlett Johansson. We got it. I was excited to go ahead and see this film show some action. I'm so sorry. I'm really excited that this movie had some action. It had some comedy. It had a charismatic lead, and it had a sympathetic villain. These are all components of Marvel movies that we've come to know and we come to love. This is no different. So for Shang-Chi, I personally enjoyed it very, very much. I want to go see it again, and I can't give it lower than a 9. I'm right there, Phil. Like, if I could give it a 9.25, I don't know if it's a 9.5, but it's in between that 9.5. So I'll give it a 9.25. We'll break the rules. I don't think we ever came up with a decimal rule, so that's what it is.
I mean, remember when IGN used to give movies like, I give this a 6.7? It'd be like, what do you mean? So if IGN can do it, we can do whatever we want.
That's right. So yeah, I'll go with a 9.25. So that is my grade. And who knows? Maybe upon second viewing, I will feel a little bit better. But a really good film overall. I'm super excited we got to talk about it. And again, I'm super excited to probably see it again.
That's definitely, I think, the highest. I mean, granted, there's only been a couple of them, but as far as the Marvel projects in general, that's the highest rating we've given out, I think, since Endgame and Infinity War. So,
and then just to think about it, there's still the Eternals, which we don't know how that's going to go. Yeah. And then there's Spider-Man. So, man, Marvel is gonna just take it home.
They were literally like, DC can have the first half of this year, and we'll take August on.
And I'm super excited about that, because then we won't ever have to talk about Wonder Woman again. So the farther away we could get away from that Wonder Woman review, Jesus Christ.
We have gotten Suicide Squad and the Snyder Cut this year. So, and I don't know if you saw this. This is kind of a spoiler for What Did I Miss at the end of the month, but the Injustice animated movie will be out next month. So,
yeah, we got a lot of great content here at the Wait For It podcast that you can look forward to.
You know, and one more thing before we wrap up. You know what this thing did is it did the opposite of what Captain Marvel did, where, like you said, it introduced a charismatic lead. And we talked about this the other day. I absolutely love Brie Larson, but Captain Marvel didn't necessarily do a good job at presenting her as like a likable character. The best part of Captain Marvel that we all love is what's his name? The alien.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I said he's the best part, and we can't even remember his name. The Skrull.
No, the Skrull. I don't know why I don't remember his character name. I know who plays him, but yeah,
it was the opposite of Captain Marvel, which is not a bad film, but it's not as good as it should have been. So.
No, not at all. One of the better solo films. I feel like we've been waiting for something like this, and I think this movie does deliver. I think it delivers everything it needed to.
Absolutely. Well, again, we're going to be doing more of these live streams here in the future, because there are a crap ton of movies and TV shows coming out here over the next few months. And don't forget to find the podcast anywhere you listen to your podcast, which of course includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, Buzzsprout, and wherever else you find your favorite shows. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, please consider leaving us a 5-star review. It's one of the best ways you can support the show. You can also find us on YouTube. Of course, the link, if you're watching this late, well, you're on YouTube right now, so you probably know where to find the link. So never mind. You can also find us on social media on Facebook and Instagram at Wait For It Podcast, and on Twitter at Wait For It Pod. We have a whole lot of really, really fun episodes planned for this month, so we are really, really excited to get into it. We got a double dose of Dexter here. The Dexter episode of Netflix and Phil comes out on Monday, and then we'll revisit Dexter again at the end of the month for tirades and hot takes. So lots of Dexter, lots of murder and stuff if you're into that. And then Spooktober is right around the corner, and I have some exciting guests hopefully lined up for that too.
Yeah, if you check out our social media, we just posted our monthly what's going to come in the month of September. So make sure to check that out. But with that being said, my name is Mr. Eric Almighty. That is my co-host, Phil the Filipino. And don't forget, we release new podcast episodes every Monday and Wednesday with the occasional live stream here on YouTube. And all you have to do is wait for it.
Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.